Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we will be talking about culture. Culture is chapter 3 of the college level sociology course. Let's start off with how most people assume that culture is defined. So, what culture means to most people is that it's an appreciation of the finer things in life, for example, Shakespeare's sonnets, operas, and even civil language. However, sociologists tend to use this term much more broadly. Culture to them refers to the learned and shared behaviors, beliefs, attitudes, values, and material objects that characterize a particular group or society. And a society is the group of people who share that culture and a defined territory with it. And an important thing in this lesson is that neither society nor culture can exist without the other. All societies share the same rules about culture. Culture is learned and it's not innate. Second, culture is transmitted from one generation to the next. Third, culture is shared and brings community members together. And fourth, culture is adaptive and always changes over time. And an important side note is that culture shapes who we are, but people are the ones who create culture. An example is that after 9/11 happened, there was much more airport security, but that extra airport security didn't bother us because as the dangers of society have grown, people have passed laws which have made security much more increased and making it safer, but also decreasing privacy at the same time because we're getting checked more thoroughly. There are two types of culture today that we will discuss. The first is material culture, which are the physical objects that people make, use, and share. For example, when I went on a trip to India, we had these Sandur elephant objects that were very expensive, and they were very important to the culture of Hinduism. And also, for example, non-material culture, which are the ideas people create to interpret and understand the world. And this could be religion. A symbol, however, is anything that stands for something else with a particular meaning for people who share that culture. For example, handshakes are a symbol which communicate friendship and courtesy. Written words are the most common symbols, but we also communicate through tattoos, weddings, purchase of goods, and also gestures. Symbols tend to unify people. About 75% of Americans say that they display the nation's flag in their home, workplace, car, or clothing. And the American flag is a symbol that unifies American people. The most powerful human symbol on this planet is language. Language is a system of shared symbols that enables people to communicate with one another. In every society, children begin to grasp the essential structure of their language at a very early age, and with little to no instruction. And the babbling that children tend to start with rapidly leads to uttering words and combinations of words that represent an idea, feeling, or physical object. One hypothesis named Sapir-Whorf theorized that thoughts and behaviors were determined by language, and that language provides people with a framework for interpreting social reality and the world around them. In a recent survey of 14 developed countries, including the United States, large majorities of people said that speaking the country's language is very important in being one of us. Language is far more important than in being part of a nation than birthplace, religious affiliation, education, clothing preference, and celebrating holidays that are a part of the host country. For many nations, accordingly, language is the cornerstone of acceptance into that group. Words written and spoken also create and reinforce positive and negative images about race and ethnicity. For example, someone might receive a black mark, and a white lie isn't really a lie. We blackball someone, we blacken someone's reputation, we denounce blackguards, otherwise known as villains, and we prosecute people in the black market. In contrast, a white knight rescues people in distress, the white hope brings glory to a group, and good guys wear white hats. This language is just so hardwired in racism. and I do believe that such words lead to the stereotyping we see today. Moving on, values are standards by which people define what is good and what is bad, what is moral, what is immoral, what is proper, and what is improper. The widely shared values provide general guidelines for everyday behavior. Some examples of core US values are achievement and success, and it stresses that talent and hard work relate to success, activity in work, which is being focused and disciplined, and humanitarianism, which is a concern for others, helping them and providing support through kind measures, efficiency and practicality, getting things done at the cheapest costs, and also making sure that it's done efficiently, progress, which is a focus on the improvement and the betterment of things, and looking towards the future, and also material possessions we strive for, having more stuff, freedom and equality, conformity, we don't want to be labeled as strange and weird and we like to be accepted, democracy, which is a huge part of American policy, and individualism, which is a focus on personal development rather than the development of the community. Conflicting values, however, contradict each other. For example, Americans believe in religious freedom, but 82% of Americans say that it's important that Christians be able to worship freely, compared with 61% who say the same for Muslims. And that is an example of conflicting values. Cultural values also change because of technology advancements, immigration, and outsider contact. For example, over time, the United States developed a meaningful philosophy of life, plummeted in importance, whereas being well off surged because people tend to consider being well off financially more important than learning about the world nowadays. Values are general standards, however, norms are a society's specific rules of right and wrong behavior, and most are unwritten and passed down. They also serve a purpose, a specific one, and they change over time just like values do. Norms regulate behavior, but they can differ because of characteristics like age, social class, race, and gender. For example, many Hindus don't eat cow meat out of respect for their religion and sacred spirits, whereas other cultures may not give much thought to the amount of steak they eat. Another topic in culture are folkways. Folkways are a specific type of norm that includes everyday customs, practices, and interactions. For example, etiquette rules like covering your mouth to cough, or knocking before entering someone's private space. And we automatically practice many folkways because we have internalized them since birth, although they may vary from country to country. Mores are norms that people consider important because they maintain proper moral and ethical behavior. Folkways emphasize out-to behavior, whereas mores define must behavior. An example of this are the 10 Commandments, which is a civil and religious more. The strictest mores are identified as taboos, which forbid acts that violate social customs. For example, 92% of Americans say that having an extramarital affair is morally wrong, and this is an example of a taboo. Laws are formally defined norms about what is illegal and what is legal, and they're backed by courts which have the power to punish violators. Sanctions are why people tend to conform to norms. Sanctions provide rewards for good and appropriate behavior, and penalties for bad or inappropriate behavior. Children, for example, learn norms through positive sanctions like hugs, smiles, and new toys, and also negative sanctions like spanking, scolding, and frowning. Rituals are formed and repeated behaviors that united people. For example, this includes giving gifts during Christmas celebrations and oaths of allegiance. What all rituals have in common is the transmission and reinforcement of norms that unite us and strengthen relationships. Another important definition when speaking about culture is that cultural universals are customs and practices that are common to all societies throughout the world. And moving on about non-material cultures, there are two types of cultures in non-material cultures. There's the ideal culture, which comprises which comprises of beliefs, values, and norms that most people say they hold and follow. However, in every society, the ideal culture differs from real culture, or people's actual behavior every day. For example, parent-child relationships. Americans say that they love and cherish their children, but every year hundreds of thousands of children experience abuse and neglect on a daily basis. In fact, 92% of the children offenders are parents. Another important definition is ethnocentrism. Ethnocentrism is the belief that one's culture, society, or group is inherently superior to others. Because people internalize their culture and tend to see their way of life as the best and the most natural, they often disparage with those who have differing attitudes and behaviors, and they disparage them as inferior, wrong, or backward. How many of you, for example, are repelled at the thought of eating insects, cats, or dogs? That's because you're not used to eating them growing up, but in many cultures, it's a normalized activity. The direct opposite to ethnocentrism is cultural relativism. Cultural relativism is the belief that no culture is better than another, and they all should be judged by their own standards. A subculture is a group within society that has distinctive norms, values, beliefs, and lifestyles, and it is a part of the large dominant culture, but it holds its own particular ways of thinking and feeling. We usually participate in subcultures without having much commitment to any of them. For example, a subculture could be basketball fans, guitar players, collectors of ceramic frogs. But on the other hand, members of racial or ethnic subcultures may intentionally live in the same neighborhoods, associate with each other, have close personal relationships, and marry others who are similar to themselves. Countercultures are groups within society that openly oppose or reject some of the dominant culture's norms, values, and laws. Multiculturalism, also known to most as cultural pluralism, it refers to the coexistence of several cultures in the same geographic area without one culture dominating the others. People who travel to other cultures may sometimes experience cultural shock, which is a confusion, disorientation, or anxiety accompanying exposure to an unfamiliar way of life, and the most stressful changes include differences in clothing, food, language, and even pace of life. For example, in a rural town, the pace of life is a lot slower and more relaxed than in New York City. Like, I currently live in rural Pennsylvania, and traffic here is not at all what it is compared to New York City, and I'm able to drive. Recently I got my permit, and if I was in New York City, there's a lot more cars on the road, so there's a lot more safety guidelines to follow. High culture refers to the cultural expression of a society's highest social class, and examples include opera, ballet, and classical music. In contrast, popular culture refers to beliefs, practices, and activities widespread across the entire population. Members of upper class are able to pursue the fine arts because they have much more cultural capital. Cultural capital are resources such as knowledge, education, and other advantageous assets. And cultural capital sets up boundaries between social classes, but our cultural expressions and products often contain elements of both popular and high culture. For instance, African American jazz players have inspired European classical music composers, and themselves performed classical music. Another common example is that American fast food restaurants are popular in many Asian countries, but because of greater competition from local fast food chains, US companies now offer a large number of items geared specifically to Asian tastes. At one of China's Pizza Huts, the menu includes shrimp pizza, fried squid, and green tea ice cream. In Latin America, McDonald's sells McMoletes, English muffins filled with refried beans, cheese, and salsa. In India, McDonald's offers an entirely meat-free menu. Mass media, or forms of communication designed to reach large numbers of people, have enormous power in shaping public attitudes and behaviors. For example, some students in my class who claim not to pay attention to ads. They wear branded apparel like Nike footwear and Old Navy t-shirts. that's still considered appealing to mass media. Because the United States is the biggest producer of popular culture and mass media, many countries have become inundated with America's movies, music, television shows, satellite broadcasts, fast food, and even other consumer goods. Some observers describe the spread of US popular culture as cultural imperialism, where the values and products of one society influence or even dominate that of another. Other countries complain that US cultural imperialism displaces authentic local culture and results in cultural loss. Iran's government, for example, has denounced Batman, Spider-Man, and Harry Potter toys as a cultural invasion and challenges the country of Iran's conservative and religious values. Cultural integration, which is a consistency of various aspects of society, cultural integration promotes order and stability. For example, even when new behaviors and beliefs emerge, people commonly adapt to the existing ones. Recent immigrants may speak their native language at home and celebrate their own holy holidays, but they're expected to gradually absorb the host country's values and obey its civil and criminal laws and adapt its national language. Life would otherwise be chaotic and unpredictable. Diffusion, innovation, and invention are the three reasons society changes over time. Diffusion is the spread of cultural beliefs and activities from one group to another. This could be through trade, intermarriage, and immigration. Invention is the process of creating new things, and innovation is the process of turning those new inventions into mass market products. And these spark cultural change. For example, when Henry Ford assembled the first car, and when the Human Genome Project consisted of many different scientists' work, those new innovations put to use the inventions and were able to find a way to get mass appeal for the product. Discovery, however, involves exploration and investigation, and that also usually results in new products and insights. For example, penicillin, when it was first discovered, it was realized that penicillin was able to prolong lives, and that in turn led to more people at older age living. Some discoveries, they occur by chance, which is usually known as the serendipity effect. For example, George Mestral, a mechanical engineer, he was hiking through the woods one day, and he was annoyed by the birds that constantly clung to his clothing. His invention was the Velcro, and it involved a hook and loop fastener, just like those annoying birds had and utilized. So that clearly was an occurrence of chance that George Mestral was hiking that day. Some parts of culture change more rapidly than others and creates a cultural lag when material culture changes faster than non-material culture. An example includes texting while driving, and this results in numerous fatal car crashes. But many states still do not enforce laws against texting, and this is because technology moves faster than laws which regulate. And just like that, Chapter 3 is all wrapped up. Be on the lookout for Chapter 4 coming out next week.